Welcome to the place where we gain knowledge through the lens of creativity. I am Aaron Dworkin, and this is Artful Science. Thanks again for joining me here on Artful Science. Today's show is Kiss, Play, Make, STEAM, the art behind scientific discovery. And my guest is Herb Winful, professor of electrical engineering and computer science here at the University of Michigan. Herb, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aaron. It's my pleasure to be here.
Oh, well, it is truly my honor to be able to be interviewing you and talking about these really interesting issues. And obviously, our whole show is about this connection between the arts and sciences. So I'm especially excited to talk with you. But as we kind of get started, and obviously you have a background in electrical engineering, computer science, and not only that, dealing a lot with quantum mechanics, tunneling time, which I think as an artist, I just probably have a difficult time even wrapping my head around. But these types of things, right? Especially, I can look at certain, environmental science and say, okay, that environmental science teaches us that this is good or bad for our atmosphere. But when it comes to things like quantum mechanics and of tunneling time and these types of things that go kind of deep into a world that we literally can't see, can you just help, for me as an artist, kind of understand what are the real world implications of this work that you do every day, right? Why is it important to, say, me as an artist? How will it affect me?
Well, you mentioned quantum tunneling and tunneling time. Well, quantum tunneling is a phenomenon in which a particle is able to go through what we call a potential barrier. I mean, let's say, imagine you throw a ball at a wall, right? You would expect that the ball will bounce back. Now, you'd be shocked if the ball went right through the wall. And that is the awesome ability of subatomic particles, which obey the rules of quantum mechanics. Those particles can also act like waves. And when acting like waves, they can actually go through something like a wall. So you throw this quantum mechanical ball at a wall, and it goes right through, as if it wasn't there. So that phenomenon is called quantum tunneling, where a particle can go through a barrier.
Wow.
Now, it has implications. Quantum tunneling, as an artist, you rely on light, right? Well, quantum tunneling is behind one of the processes that makes possible for the sun's energy to be produced. There's a fusion reaction in the sun, the fusion of a couple of protons, and there's quantum tunneling that is behind the initiation of this reaction. So without the sun's light, well, where would artists be? So it's really, really fundamental. It's also important in the process of photosynthesis, which plants use for to get on with their lives, right? So as artists, the quantum tunneling plays a very important role. It's also important in things like the scanning tunneling microscope, which one uses to observe really, really, really tiny microscopic objects at the atomic scale. So
right. It's amazing and it's extraordinary. And of course, so much art has been made in reflection or in honor to the sun. And I think it's amazing too, this kind of duality where we can look at things from the sun that you probably look and see on this quantum level, what's actually happening that is physically creating what we see, and then how an artist also looks and finds inspiration and meaning for humanity through that exact same thing. And in many ways, I think that kind of ties in, you've been quoted by talking about equations and describing them as beautiful. Right. And so when I think of, some tough times I had in certain classes back at Michigan, when there's a whole bunch of numbers and letters and symbols in a line on a chalkboard, and I'm trying to figure it out, and often I didn't see it as beautiful. I'm curious, when you kind of talk about that, how are for you a series of letters, numbers, how do they become beautiful?
Well, they're beautiful because they represent nature's laws, nature's behaviors in a very concise and compact form. Instead of me saying, well, the time variation of the magnetic field gives rise to an electric field, I can compress all that into a tiny equation. That equation is part of what's known as Maxwell's equations. And for me, Maxwell's equations are the most beautiful equations. When I first laid eyes on them, I pretty much fell in love with them because they show you how the electric field, the electric field is a field that's produced by charged particles, for example, like electrons. The electric field and the magnetic field, and everyone is familiar with magnets, and the fields they produce. The electric field and the magnetic field are not independent when it comes to the things that produce waves, electromagnetic waves, like light waves. We mentioned light from the sun, light waves, laser light, radio waves, microwaves. They're all part of the electromagnetic spectrum. So colors, red, yellow, green, all those colors, they're all part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And Maxwell's equations describe how these waves are produced. So how the variation in time of the magnetic field can give rise to an electric field, how the variation in time of the electric field can give rise to a magnetic field. So these are interconnected. And they look beautiful, and there's a beautiful symmetry about them. So they're aesthetically pleasing, and they're also pleasing when you understand the deeper implications of those equations.
And in some ways, it's almost like I'm thinking of, there are people who will sit and listen to, a beautiful orchestral work, where a composer actually understands the mechanics that have created that music, right? They understand the mathematics behind what was created. They understand all of these these equations that created the composition, where someone may be watching it. And so it's amazing because I'm thinking about these things like light and lasers and things that I might look at. And then as you see them, you see almost the equations that have created them, enable them to be.
That's right. Yeah, you see the laws that govern them.
Right. Awesome. So, in all of your work, and especially your extraordinary teaching, awarded, recognized teaching, you have become kind of fascinated with this connections of the arts and sciences. And this has developed kind of a theme that you teach to your students in the sciences, which is this KISS, Play, Make, STEAM. Could you share what is that about?
Okay. So some years ago, the deans on North Campus asked a bunch of us to create a new course that would bring together the arts and the sciences, because the art school and the engineering school and the music school, the architecture school, they are all up on North Campus. So wouldn't it be great if we could bring all those disciplines together? And so with a bunch of my colleagues in those different departments, we created this course called The Creative Process. And so here I was having to teach, as an engineer, concepts to students who come from art, from history, from all these other disciplines. And as an engineer, I needed to find a way to break things down to its simplest form and also inspire them to be more creative. So I came up with this notion The KISS stands for keep it simple, sir, because I reminded myself that these are not mathematicians, they're not engineers for the most part. So keep it simple, teach very simple concepts, okay? The play is important because it's through play that we stimulate the imagination. We try out different things, in a safe environment. Einstein liked to talk about how he loved mental play. For him, fantasy is even more important than rigorous knowledge because it helps stimulate his creativity. And so I wanted to focus on play and also the make. It's important to have the experience of actually creating things with your hands, working with tangible stuff to bring real products out. So that's the make in kids play make. And then the STEAM, well, science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics coming together in a holistic piece. So we tie it all together. So kids play make STEAM. So that was the foundation of the way I structured the course. And so I taught art students how to build basic electric motors based on electromagnetic principles. And once they grasped that very simple principle, they could make a motor with a magnet, a battery, and a piece of wire. And we don't stop there. Once they made it and it's spinning, I asked them to tap into their artistic genius and take it further. And so some would make, for example, origami paper swans or cranes, and they would attach them to this motor, and you could see them spinning beautifully. It's like a work of art. You've combined art with science and created something beautiful and is governed by the principles of science.
Wow. So you have made all of these connections between the arts and sciences, and I actually happen to know the answer to this question, but I ask it anyway of every one of my guests. And I know it because I've had the opportunity actually to hear you play, but I ask my guests, do you have any actual artistic practices that you engage in or that you like? And so if you're able to share with our audience.
As a matter of fact, I do. I happen to play the piano. It's really my passion. And it's what has kept me sane through this pandemic. Being at home, like virtually 24 hours a day, I'd go crazy. But fortunately, I have a piano here and I can sit there and play. And some years ago, while just playing around on the piano, if a tune came up, I was actually able to compose something. I hadn't set out to compose, but just playing, and this is why I stress the importance of play. I was just fooling around, and it turned out into my very first composition, the piece that I call Spirit Dreams, which, if people are interested, I was going to play it for you, but we don't have the time.
Unfortunately, but they can absolutely go online and Google you and your TED Talk. And I encourage everyone to do that for sure. Thank you so much, Herb Winful. You have been helping us gain knowledge through the lens of creativity here on Artful Science. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a real pleasure.